What's up, folks? KL Smith here, bringing you guys episode number 15 of the Modern Future Podcast. Today is another special day. We got a guest on the show. This is someone that I've known, man, it's been about 11 years now.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Very good friend of mine, Will Kinsler. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing well, man. I'm ready for spring. I don't know about you, but this long rainy winter here is getting to me. We've seen some signs of sunshine.
Yep.
I'm ready for it.
It's always like right at the end. It's either the end of the end of fall, you're ready for like, okay, I just want the cold weather, especially when you're in the heat. The end of
Yeah,
winter, you're ready for it. And the thing that always gets me about it, it's like you'll get teased. Like we got teased a little bit this week. It was 73 degrees yesterday. It was
yeah, yeah,
nice. It
yeah,
was
yeah,
outside.
yeah.
Now it's rainy. I mean, it's warm, but it's just like soggy, nasty
Yeah,
weather.
it's brutal. Yeah, it's funny. I'm normally cool with winter, right? Like I typically don't like the really hot weather. But I think, when you combine that with a world where we're spending so much time inside, and then it's dark all winter and stuff, like, I'm ready. I'm ready to go outside, at least in my own yard.
Yeah. All right. So today, we're kind of just gonna shoot the shit a little bit today,
Yeah.
but I wanted to do something a little bit different after talking with you. I think we've been talking about doing a podcast for more or less like
Too long.
six,
Probably
5 years,
yeah, I don't know, a long
three,
time.
four,
Yeah, right.
something like that.
Because like the background, right, is like we go to lunch a couple times a week and we
Yep.
have these amazing conversations. And you're like, man, this is like so good. We should turn it into a podcast. And then we just, like everything else, it's not a priority, right? Until you
Nope.
until you decide to do it, you haven't made it a priority. So this
Yeah.
is us trying that out. We'll have one of our conversations and see how it goes.
For those unaware and listening to what Will said, Will is basically the inspiration for the Modern Future podcast. Just as a way to just get out there and do it, just get the wheels started and start moving this thing. So I started the podcast with based on some of the conversations that him and I have had in the past of just like, hey, just start a podcast up. And I've
Yeah.
just been trying to get the right ingredients together to make this repeatable and entertaining and all of those things. So yeah, I mean that's a little bit of history for some folks out there. Today, we wanted to sauce it up a little bit, and Will doesn't have an EV. We talk about EVs on the show. To really talk about everything on the show, but Will doesn't have an EV, electric vehicle. I do. So we're gonna ask Will some questions about why he doesn't have an EV, what's holding him back, and I'm gonna try to convince him uh,
Okay.
to sauce up his life with an electric vehicle. Then, as you guys can see in the background, Will has some things on display. And for the folks that enjoy sneakers and some of the stuff I talk about over here, he's into sports card collecting. So we're gonna have Will talk a little bit about that, and then we're gonna round it out with some sneaker snuff this week, as we always do. And I know Will has at least got on his Yeezy game. I know he was on the forces for quite a while. Has a variety of forces, so we might get Will to buy something this week that's popping off. Them AJ1 University Blues. Those are lovely things. I'll bring them down for you. They released this week. I couldn't resist, Will. I
Yeah.
traded for them, and I'm very excited.
Yeah, it's sometimes you see that sneaker that you just have to
You
have.
have to, yeah, yeah.
Um, I'm trying to moderate myself a little bit. So like, because for me now it's not just a decision about what sneaker is about. Do I buy that sports card or buy that sneaker, right?
Yep.
And I'm probably heavy more into the sports card stuff right now. And so like I have to like turn off notifications for sneakers app and stuff like that because otherwise I'm just susceptible, right?
Yep, yep, yep. That's what it's like. That's the life. All right, so Will, we talked a little bit about this not too long ago before we decided to hop on and do this,
Yeah.
and some of our friends, the place where we probably see the most EVs ever. is a constant reminder that like, hey, the world is kind of changing. When you go
Yeah.
look at the parking lot and you see, first you started off with a couple EVs, then next time you come back, it's a couple more, and the next time you come back, it's like, oh, well, it's a lot of electric vehicles around here. I purchased my Tesla in 2018. I've been talking it up. You've ridden with me in it a couple times in it.
Yeah.
Uh, what's holding you back right now? What's the thing that's not gotten you over the hump?
I mean, I think there's a couple of things. First of all, I'm just not that into cars, right? Like I'm not a big car person, right? So like I'll buy a car and keep my car, for as long as I possibly can. Because for me, it's mostly, just about the basic utility of it,
Right.
right? So like I bought, I think right around the same time you bought your car, I bought a Chevy Traverse, right? Because I
Yep.
have a big family, right, with a lot of kids. Uh, I view that car as like, um, when I was thinking about buying a car, I was like, okay, so what am I gonna do with this, right? Like, one, I know there's gonna be times where we're all gonna be together, right?
Mm-hmm.
We like to do car trips, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, I'm that person that's like, under 6 hours drivable, I'm ready to do it. You know what I mean? Like, and where I live, there's plenty of places because you can go to the mountains, you can go to the ocean, and so those were some of the drivers, for me. It had Wi-Fi, right? So I'm thinking about kids in young kids in a long car trip with an iPad or whatever. Keeping themselves entertained. Not like me when I was 8 or 9 years old trying to count how many of like whatever this sign was or that sign was that we passed on I-95.
Yeah.
Um, so I bought a car, and I paid it off. It's already paid off. So I'm not really thinking about a car. Interestingly enough, and I don't think I mentioned this, my wife, right, is like, she's like, I want a Tesla. And I don't even think she's ever been in one, right? I think she likes the idea of it, right?
Yeah.
Which is appealing to me too, right? Like, um, I think as like I think as an individual, like I always look at you and I think like there's certain things that you're an early adopter for, right? Certain
Yeah.
things that you care about, and I'm the same way. There's certain things in my life that are so important or so interesting to me that I'm an early adopter, for those things. And not always, but there's certain things that pop out and I'm like, oh, I got to try that, right? And we can talk about that a little bit later when we get into some of the sports card stuff because there's some new things. But um, because I don't have that interest in vehicles and in cars, especially now when I'm like I drive like once every 2 or 3 weeks
Oh
right now.
God. Yeah.
Not
Yeah.
really going anywhere, right? So I'm not thinking about it. You know, uh, it's just not on my mind. I think the other thing is like if you're an early adopter, you kind of paying a bit of a premium, right? For something, if it's new technology, you're paying a little bit of a premium for it. And so like for example, I do value positive impact to the environment, right?
Yep.
I like the idea of not ever having to go get gas. That's got to be pretty awesome. I had probably 10 years ago I had one of like early Honda hybrid, right? That
Yep.
I had put a
I
lot
remember
of miles,
that.
and I really enjoyed that car, but it also I didn't pay a premium for it, right? Like it was a used car and it was a few years old hybrid, and and so it didn't last me that long. But I can see the benefit, and like you said, I've been inside your car, so I understand the value, and I also understand like the future, part of it, the future looking part of it. Um, I think I'm just a late adopter. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think it's probably got to come down in price some. It's probably got to be um where I don't where I don't really have to think a whole lot about it, right? Like when it's in the same mix as every other kind of car, or when it's just ubiquitous or whatever. It's like every car company has this kind of car. Then for sure, I'm in. So I don't know if I probably won't be the last person to buy one, right? I'm just not in that first few waves. I don't
Right.
think. Um, but and so I'm not and the other thing is then there's just ignorance, right? So there's some things I just don't
Don't
know,
know.
right? But because I'm not an early adopter and I'm not following, I see there's a lot of interest on it. I see the Tesla stock, right? Obviously, there's a lot of people that feel good about, they don't do just cars, but there's certainly people think that there's a future in it, and I think there's some compelling stuff, and I think the automation part of it is pretty cool too.
Right.
That's probably the most appealing thing to me, because I don't really enjoy driving all that much. Sometimes if I'm on the Blue Ridge Parkway, beautiful drive, I love it. Drive to work, drive to the store, not that interested.
Okay. So there's a couple things that you hit on that I think are compelling for our next EV. One of them is size, right? Like I'm at the point now, I didn't consider having a big family like as a factor, but as soon as we had our third kid, we were like, oh,
It's a game changer.
it's
Yeah.
this is kind of small, like.
Yeah.
And the
You need
funny
that
thing,
third row.
yeah, the funny thing is we got the Subaru Ascent um, before we found out we were having a third kid, but we got it in the event that family is over, right? So when family comes over, we didn't like the idea of driving two separate cars or
Right.
forcing family to like, oh, we're not going to fly down, or if we do fly down, we have to get a rental or something like that. We would say, hey, we got a big enough car we can fit everybody. Well, that's not really the case now. We got to drive two cars, but so I think that first thing is something that one, it's not solved yet. There's no big EV that gets a big family going. So you're right, like you got to wait there. Not driving, I think, is interesting because when you think about EVs, when Christy and I were having this discussion not too long ago, I had to jump our Subaru because it sat for so long. And I wouldn't say that's normally something that like you should drive your EV as well, because it also has a small battery. But when I was thinking about that, I was like, man, it sure would be nice to just get up and go, right? Like that's basically what you would do in your EV. But with the Subaru, the one thing we thought about was like, oh, I also need to get gas. So it's like not only did I need to jump the car, but it's like, oh, actually got to go get gas. And listen, man, the thing that really got me off of like I was, of course I was an early adopter, but the thing that really got me off of wanting to have a gasoline, diesel, anything with an ICE engine, combustible engine vehicle was that moment that I got that home charger and I plugged it in and like was just able to charge at home and was like, boom, done. I was like, oh, wait, that's it? That's all I got to do? As soon as I realized that, it was like, oh, this is a game changer. And that was like at the same moment that I was like, oh, we need to get solar. Because then it all came together to me. It was like, you get your solar grid, or so you get all, or solar power, so you get off the electrical grid. Then it's like you own all your power. Nobody's like, hey, this is going to get charged you whatever a month. Or have an issue that happened in Texas, which I mentioned on last episode, where some of the folks that still had power were getting $17,000 bills because of supply and demand. It's like crazy.
Yeah. So it's about self-sufficiency.
Oh yes.
Right. So it's like, I mean, there's certainly a advantage that if there was ever a oil shortage or something where you live or something like that, and then you can be independent on power. I mean, I think those are certainly compelling reasons, and some of that is just some of that's like just basic core, like I'm taking care of my family stuff, right?
Yep. The other thing that you mentioned that I thought I wanted to just touch on quickly was the ability to basically take your vehicle after it's been sitting somewhere or wherever, and you mentioned automation. When you get on the highway, or really you can do it now without the highway, but you're not driving, right? Like the car is driving for you. That is, listen, there's some things where you go, man, this car is pretty high tech.
Yeah.
Like I've been in some, you get into a car, somebody has a nice car, you go, oh man, there's a lot of buttons. There's a lot of stuff this car has.
Right.
You go into the Tesla and it drives you somewhere and you're like, well, this is actually the future of forget what I said about the previous car.
Yeah.
This is actually the future.
Yeah. So when I think about that, and part of the value for me of automation is like, because I don't like driving,
It takes away the hassle.
it takes away the hassle, but it's also about time, right?
Yeah.
So you can be doing something else. So I
Else.
do value my time, right? So like an example of like a practical application for me, and I think I mentioned this to you before, is like, if 20 years from now, when I'm hopefully retired, I can buy a vehicle that is automated, that's like an RV, then I can do that cross country trip with my wife without having to drive all those miles,
Yeah.
because I don't want to do.
Yeah.
Right. And if it's like I can hop in, my car here on the east, in my vehicle here on the East Coast, and we can watch movies and play games and do whatever else it is, as we, going across the country, and it brings me into some, futuristic RV park, in whatever city it is I want to go to, I can charge it, and whatever else, then like, that's a future that I think makes a lot of sense, and like, it'll solve that particular problem. And so of course, I think technology, that's what technology is built for, right? Is solutions, right?
Right.
And solving problems or making things better. And it's not even like it's really a problem, right? But like, not, before the microwave was invented, I don't know that people thought it was a problem that they have to use their oven, right? Or their stove. And so things that make life more efficient, more, easier. I have a household full of that kind of stuff, right? Like I don't even have to touch the light switch if I don't
Right.
want to.
Yep.
So, I think those things are appealing. And yeah, I mean, those are things that I look forward to. I think I just haven't thought like I want to pay a premium to do this right now.
Right. Now the one thing, now let's talk about price, right? What's the price range that you feel like is the automatic buy for you?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, it would just have to be priced similarly to what my vehicle is now. So like, I it's funny, like when you go car shopping, it's like a lot of times you think you have a price in mind, right?
Yep.
And so my price was actually like pretty low for, and I was just like, because I don't care about, I'm kind of like no frills or like, whatever. I was willing to get, not a SUV that was like lesser quality than the one that I bought. And so I bought it, and I think it was like mid 40s or something like that.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Interesting.
But
Now,
it was because because I got inside it, right? Because if you can get somebody inside it, right, and they can see it, right, and feel that way, then you're like, yeah, okay, I get it. So now, would I buy a second vehicle that was that same price? Probably
probably
not. Right?
not.
Second vehicle's gotta come down in price, but maybe the second vehicle's not a SUV, right?
Yep.
So it really depends. So yeah, what are you
Okay.
going to tell me about price?
All right. So
Tell
there's a
me the
couple
good
things.
news.
Yeah, I'm gonna tell you a couple good things. First off, let's talk about this administration, right?
Yeah.
Now, previously there was a tax credit in place for EVs. You purchase an EV. This is what I did when I purchased my Tesla. I got to apply. It was $7,500 credit toward, or $7,500 or $7,000 credit toward the car. That happens on your refund. So that money just gets tacked on at the end of the year on your tax refund.
Oh wow.
The Biden administration is supposed to renew some of the cars that were not eligible, which would be GM and Tesla. Everybody else was under the threshold, which was 200,000 cars sold in the U.S. So they surpassed that. But when they reintroduced it, I think it goes to 600,000, if memory serves correct, 600,000 vehicles. So Tesla and GM would get to renew, and then everybody else was already eligible, so they're fine. Now, the thing I want to mention on price is, in addition to the tax credit, the issue that I think, just talking through the things that you have, there's not a vehicle yet that's, I would say, priced in that range, even with the tax credit. There's no big SUV that's going to solve the big family problem. The closest one, which isn't even out yet, doesn't come out to 2022, is Rivian, who I may have talked to you about them before, but they're basically going to come out with the first truck. It kind of has the Wally eyes.
Uh-huh.
Um, that's called the R1T. That comes out in June. They have another one that basically puts on a cab on the back, and it's a big body SUV. It's called the R1S, and that's supposed to come out in 2022. They really haven't given a date, so they'll technically, if all things stay consistent with what they've been doing right now, they'll probably be the first one with a big full SUV, not a crossover SUV, a 7-seater SUV that should get pretty good mileage. I think if they're going to match their truck, it might be in the 300 to 400 mile range, which is not bad. That's currently what I have with my Model 3. I'm at 316 or something like that, I think, fully charged. That'll get you most places with the Tesla supercharger network. Now, the downside is, with a new company like Rivian, I don't know what they're going to do with their supercharger network, which they're calling Rivian Adventure Network, I think, RAN. So that's the downside. But they're priced at like 69, I think, is the last thing I remember. So you take off 7,000 from that, they're still in the 60s, right?
Right.
So no one has really gotten to that big body, nice pricing for a decent sized SUV. So that's the downside. But they're coming. I think we're still probably 5 years out before we start seeing some really big SUVs come out that are like
Yeah.
40s or below.
Yeah. So maybe it's my next vehicle.
It could be your next vehicle. Yeah, for sure. The Cybertruck, which is a big body, just doesn't have a bed. That entry price is 39.9, I think, or 39,000 or something like that. I got the step up from that with the 48, and then there's one that's even higher, which is supposed to get like 500 plus miles range. That's at like 69 or something like that too. So, um, I mean, the big boys are coming, but I still think before we get to that price range, you're talking like 2025 probably, when there's at least more than one option. So,
Gotcha.
okay, all right. It sounds like, I mean, to me, it sounds like you're there.
Yeah.
You got all it's not like, I think we already talked through range anxiety. I mean, you're going to be able to take anything in the next couple years anywhere, really, when it
Yeah.
comes to EVs. So that was
Yeah.
something that we initially talked
Because
about.
it's got to be simple, right? I mean,
Yeah,
that's why people sometimes people don't early adopt. It's like, is this? It's got to be easier. It can't make things harder, right? It
yeah,
can't make things more complicated. The flip side, of course, of early, being an early adopter, like, if there's the premium you pay, and there's you have to learn, or work through whatever the quirks are, but then you're aware of things like the tax credit, like a thing that I didn't know about, right? If you're paying attention to that sort of stuff. So yeah, I mean, I think you're right. We're probably on the cusp, right? Hopefully,
it's so
because
close.
we need these, right,
Yeah,
for our world, right?
yes.
So we kind of need it to be successful. So it's good to feel like, within the next several years, we might start to really get there.
Yeah. Okay, so switching gears. All right, you got to tell me about the sports collecting of the cards. What's going on with that? I see you got the decor is lining up.
Yeah.
Everything
Yeah.
is rearranged from last time I saw, even
Yeah. Yeah.
a couple
Yeah.
weeks
So
ago.
yeah. So I I'll start from like the beginning, right? Which is like when I was like 6 or 7 years old. Um, back in the mid to late '80s. I my grandmother, she bought me this. It was like shaped like a baseball, and it was a case where you could put sports cards in, right? And every once in a while, I'd be at like 7-Eleven or something, and they'd have cards at the counter, and my dad would buy me a pack of cards.
Okay.
And when I when I got that, I think it was just like a thing you would do. They were not particularly expensive, and I liked baseball, I liked football, and so he'd buy these packs, or I'd go to the grocery store. There was a machine where for $1 you could get a pack of football cards, like Topps football cards with the gum in it and stuff like that. And so I'd buy those. But it wasn't until I got this case that I'm like, understood like, oh, the value of like collecting and organizing and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so I started doing that, and I got in my childhood, especially by like middle school, I got really into sports card collecting. And in fact, I was living overseas in Germany at the time, and I would sell sports cards to kids at my middle school.
Hustling.
This international school, right?
Hustling.
And it was a little bit of a hustle, which is kind of what it is today for a lot of people. It was a hustle for me because one, I could get the cards. This is like pre-internet, right? So like I could get the cards either when I came back to the US during the summer, or you could buy them on base or on post, right?
Yep.
If you had access to that kind of stuff. And so early 90s, NBA is really starting to take off in Europe, right? And so, Shaq was a big deal.
Michael Jordan, yeah.
And, it started to have some superstars. I became a Seattle Supersonics fan living in Germany because Detlef Schrempf was a German player that played on the Sonics. And so I could watch them on German TV. They'd cover him, right? So it was like more coverage of it. So I became a fan of those teams, even though I have no ties to Seattle or or that part of the country. Today I'm a Hornets fan because I'm in North Carolina and no Sonics, right? But so I would sell those cards, right? I got into high school, and I kind of tapered off a little bit. Sports cards, started to get more premium products. Kind of priced me out a little bit when I was a young, person, and off and on, I'd kind of like dabble, right? I'd buy some here and there, and and so I'd add to my collection periodically. And in the last several years, I'm really into boxing. I'd buy some of the old boxing cards from like 100, years ago, because some of those were pretty easy to get, and the demand around some of them is not as high as other things. Well, this year, or this last year, during the pandemic, sports card collecting really took off in a big way. And so interest in it, values of the prices of cards and stuff like that really took off during the pandemic. I think there's a bunch of reasons for it. One is like people are at home, and it's a thing you can do with your spare time. I think two, you had renewed interest in basketball during the bubble, and you had Michael Jordan, The Last Dance came out. It was a big thing people were talking about real early on, in being at home. And so you had some of these things converging. And the third thing, I think, and this is a thing we maybe talk about a little more broadly, but like the third thing is that like average Joe's trying to find different ways to make money. You know what I mean? I know on your episode you talked about GME and some of that other stuff, and I think we're starting to see like people are trying to figure it out. They're trying to figure out, how do I get that extra income? And so it's a thing. You can put money into sports cards. I'm not saying I would recommend doing that, but it's a thing that's happening. So I recognize, I started like, I don't know, 6-7 months ago, maybe a little longer. I started paying attention again. And I went to my local hobby shop, sports card shop, and, bought some cards and was trying to learn and stuff. And it really just kind of like reignited that fire for me. Now, I'm not a person that is primarily in sports cards in order to make money. In fact, in that time that I have been, collecting again, and I've been doing it very avid about it now, right? I'm very, strongly tied to that community. I spend a lot of time doing it. I haven't sold one sports card, right? So I'm not flipping cards, right? I'm not opening up packs and flipping cards and stuff like that, but it is a thing. So now there's this ecosystem, right, where When I was a kid, and this is why I gave that frame of reference, you'd go. I had a subscription to Beckett magazine. That was like the
That was
sports.
just look up your cards.
Yeah, look up your value. It shipped every month, and you'd
Yep.
see how those values change. Now those values change daily, if not hourly, right? So it's not look up Beckett. It's look on eBay and see in the last 6 hours what a card sold for.
Mm-hmm.
And it's there's a bunch of things that are driving the sports card market. Scarcity, right, which is always been a big thing for cards, and it's why your cards from the 1990s are not worth anything. They call that junk wax era because so many of them were printed. Like you can just still get them. I buy boxes, of cards from that era for $20 and can open them and and enjoy it. And they're just not as valuable. There's relevance, right?
Yeah.
Which is like who are the people now? That's why a rookie card of Dan Marino, right? A legendary quarterback might not cost as much as one of the current rookies, somebody like Tua, on the both of them playing on the Dolphins.
Yeah.
And then there's quality, right? Which is people get cards graded, and a higher grade can be a multiplier in terms of value. In fact, like the difference between a PSA 9 and a PSA 10 in value sometimes is threefold or even tenfold with certain cards, relative to their scarcity. And so there's all these things that are sort of happening, at once. And so what you've got now is, this whole, industry around, sports cards where people are trying to make it their business. So
Mm-hmm.
it's like it's some part hobby, it's some part investment for people. There are people that buy sports cards to invest in them over the long term. Somebody buys a LaMelo Ball rookies today and grades them and sits on them for the next decade. There's people that are looking to flip them, and so some of this means going into retail stores and and buying out all the packs until there aren't any, right? Which is a big thing that's happened this year. Like it used to be, in this trading card industry, there's different levels and tiers of products, right?
Right.
So like, there's that one that you can go to Walmart and Target and buy and collect with your kids or whatever, and then there's and that one, you might be able to spend $30, less than $50 to get like a decent number of cards. Then there's the stuff that you go to the hobby shop for, and some of those might be $100 a pack, $1,000 a box, or there's ones that are even like well above that, right? But what's happening now is because of the explosive growth of the industry in the last year, you can't even go to Walmart and Target. Like people are living inside a Walmart waiting for those cards to get re-upped and then just buying all of them, going
Real,
online,
real
selling
quick. I
them.
got to tell you. Did you see the story Mitch posted?
I did, yeah. So Mitch, a friend of
Friend of
ours,
ours.
he goes to Target. He's going there to get toothpaste. I actually talked to him about it. Like I had a chat with him like a day or two after he posted about this on Twitter. He goes to Target and there's like guys sitting in the parking lot that are basically like, we were here first.
First, yeah.
Right. And he's like, what? Right? Like he's there to buy some toothpaste. He did end up buying some Pokemon
Yeah,
cards.
he got some Pokemon cards.
But it's a thing, right? Like you show up and there's like go to the card aisle in Target or Walmart. There might be somebody sitting there. I think some of the stores are now limiting the amount of packs and boxes of cards that somebody can buy. But it's sort of a sad thing if you're like a collector purist because I part of why I do it is because I have young kids here and we open packs together and stuff like that. And I don't need for that to be a thing that I pay a premium for because it's not that's about collecting and enjoying the experience. It's not about making money.
Money.
Right?
Yeah.
When you can get essentially something that's meant to be a retail product that's available to everybody and it costs 2-3 times more, then that's not great. I think
Mm-hmm.
overall, because you're making a thing, that's a hobby and an interest. You're making it about money.
Money.
And it's always been there, right? You could always sell cards, but we're seeing all-time highs in terms of what some of these things are going for, and it's hard to know where that's going to go. You have people that online will, they buy boxes and stuff, and they'll open boxes for other people, viewers that are watching them. They call them breakers, right? People
Yeah.
that break products. There's an advantage to that, which is like, if I'm interested in football cards and I got $100 to spend on cards, and I want to open something nice, they'll open that $1,000 box of Panini Prism, and I'll get to open one pack of it, instead of being priced out. There's there's risk associated with that, or chance, right? Which is, typically, if you buy a box of cards, you know what the odds are of getting certain things. This box has X number of rookie autographs, or certain parallels, or different versions of a card that are going to be more valuable. So if you're buying boxes, you have a better chance of getting something of value than just individual packs, because if there's 10 packs and you buy one and you don't open all 10, then you may not get the thing that's valuable.
Yeah.
May have paid, and that kind of sucks too, because then if you're the person that has lower income, less money to spend, then it's like the people that can afford to buy the whole thing, right, are getting most of the value. So but for me, I collect, because I love doing it. Like I said, all this stuff you see behind me, a year ago, when I made this my office, to work from home, none of that was here, none of the shelves, all that stuff. My own collection, I probably have about 100,000 cards, maybe a little more. I've got a couple of large personal collections, so most of my cards are actually not in this room. These are the ones that I display, and I collect what I like to collect. I collect
Right.
boxing, I collect football, I collect basketball. The other thing that's happened is that it's not just about cards, right? So there's because there's this whole industry around some of these sports collectibles. You're starting to see new businesses pop up, and new ways of trading and dealing with these things. So for sports cards, eBay, right? That's where most people buy and sell cards.
Yeah.
But because it's more like the stock market, where it's like this constant changing thing, there's sites that pop up where you can track the value of sports cards over time, right? So if you're looking for that dip on the Zion rookie or whatever, if he hurts his wrist and he's out for 3 weeks or whatever, and then it dips, and people might look for that opportunity, and on the investment side, there's also stuff that's happening, like fractional investment opportunities, right?
Yeah.
So there's a company, there's a few of them, but there's one I'm pretty familiar with called Rally, where you can buy a fraction of one of these assets. And so it could be individual cards. They have things on there like wine. I think there's even some vehicles and stuff like that. I invested in a Pokemon set, from the one of the first edition Pokemon sets, because I think that's a not giving advice, but I think that's a thing that'll hold value over time, because it has cross generational appeal.
Yeah.
And so, like I said, these are ways that people are jumping in and out of stuff. Another one that we could maybe talk about is have you been following some of the NFT stuff?
I haven't.
So NFTs, or non-fungible tokens, are a way for somebody to take an asset, and through blockchain, make it an individual asset. So
Okay.
over the last few weeks, there has been there's a company called NBA Top Shot, and what they have done, I think they came online maybe in like October or something like that. And so I saw them pretty early on. I kind of stayed out of it because I wasn't sure it was something that I was personally going to be interested in. But basically, they they have an official NBA license, and they sell these NFTs as moments, right?
Okay.
So imagine a Zion Williamson dunk highlight that's 6 seconds long, and they turn it into this digital asset that you can own. And because of that, they can say it's limited run to however many, and each one is its own individual asset. And so it's just like sports card market. It's got scarcity, it's got relevance, Quality is less of an issue, right? Because
Interesting.
it's a digital asset, so it's not going to degrade over time
Right.
in terms of the quality. And then they have a marketplace, so you can take your moment, you can sell your moment on the marketplace almost instantly. Or in sports cards, you're talking about I gotta ship it, I gotta worry about if I'm selling somebody a $10,000 card, what do I got to do to ship that, and then
Mm-hmm.
I got to get there and all that kind of stuff. Whereas this is sort of instant. You can turn it around. So what's happened in the last several weeks is that it has taken off. So it went from a few thousand people are participating in their marketplace. I think was generating around $1 million a day for to it went to like 50 million one day last week.
My
NBA
goodness.
players are now in the mix, buying their own moments and talking about it. We've already had a Zion Williamson card sell for 200, or a moment sell for $200,000. Or sorry, no, it was a LeBron. There was a Zion one. I think it was yesterday. It went for like 120K or something like that. And so it's another, just like GME, it's another thing people are just jumping into. Let me see if I can
Make money.
make my money. And then of course
Woo!
the Top Shot guys, they're because of the explosive growth, like they're just trying to keep their website up,
Up and running.
staying
Yeah,
up,
yeah.
stuff like that, and probably try not to do anything that'll break their economy and stuff. So, um, that's one example of a thing that people are doing. And then in the sports card side, even like I think that this stuff it's really going mainstream. Like there's a company called Golden Auctions, run by a guy called Ken Golden. He's been in the sports card industry for like decades, a really well respected guy. And in 2012, he started this company, for auctioning off sports cards and memorabilia. And he did like $800,000 in revenue in the first year, and last year he did 100 million. So from 2012 to last year,
Whoa.
in 8 years, you're talking about 100x in terms of
100x. Yeah, yeah. That's
growth,
crazy.
right? So they just had this big investment round from a company called the Chernin Group, and also some other investors. And some of the other investors' names caught my attention because it's people like Mark Cuban, the music producer Timbaland, Logan Paul, Dwayne Wade, Mark Wahlberg, Deshaun Watson. So you're starting to see like athletes, celebrities pick some of this stuff, which I
Mm-hmm.
think is also why you're seeing it in the mainstream. Anyway, that's a lot of talking, but I think what it boils down to is like average Joe's looking for a way to get involved in stuff, right?
Yeah.
And while average Joe might not, 5 years ago have hopped on and tried to make money in pharmaceutical stock, right, or something, they average Joe knows about sports, and
It's
average
true.
Joe knows about video games, or average Joe knows about like these things that people think they know about, right? Makes them more likely to feel like they can be successful in a space. And I think that's what you're seeing. I think it's opportunity meets some level of knowledge, just enough knowledge probably to get some people in trouble, right?
Yep.
Because unfortunately people are doing stuff like putting their whole life savings into some of these things, or the rent money,
Yep.
because they're not viewing it as a long-term investment. They're viewing it as like some sort of speculative
Get
thing
rich
or
quick.
short time term. And so it's interesting, and there's growing pains and stuff like that with it, but um, it's also dangerous for people that don't understand the risk, or don't understand that like, hey, I'm gonna come into a new space and it's gonna take off. And after it peaks, some people are going to get scared and sell this stuff off. We've seen that with the NBA Top Shot stuff over the last few weeks, where they hit these this tier of pricing in the marketplace that was really high. And I think it's, I don't know, it might be 25-30% lower than that now, right?
Hmm.
So if you threw a bunch of money, and then you might, if you sell now, you will have lost money long term. Who knows? But so yeah, I mean, I think it's just, they're really interesting, industry, and I don't. While I'm interested in the industry, and I have put money in companies that are like related to the industry, I don't find myself somebody that wants to speculate and bet on whether or not Zion Williamson is going to have a Hall of Fame career, right? because it's just there's so much to chance, right?
Yeah,
With
yeah.
that kind of stuff.
So
But
given that you have been doing this, well, almost more than half a year now, right? For somebody new just getting in that just wants to collect cards, right?
yeah,
Um, what would you recommend that they do now, given like there's so many different options? If they wanted to try to just start card collecting, what's their best route?
yeah. I mean, I think it depends, right? Like everybody that is a part of the hobby is has some sort of personal motivation, right, for doing it, right?
Right.
Like I like card collecting for a number of reasons. One, I love sports, right? I love certain athletes, I love certain teams. I share my collection on Instagram. That's a place where people talk about a lot of their cards. A lot of times I'll post a card and it'll be, yesterday I posted one from Larry Centers, a fullback who played for the Cardinals, Washington. He played a little bit for the Bills and the Patriots. And I had made a post about, I posted a autographed card of his and made a post about how I felt like he should be in the Hall of Fame and made a case for him, because as a fullback, he has like over 800 receptions, for his career.
That's really good.
Yeah. And so he's, it's just a player that I appreciate, right? And there's different reasons why I'll pick up a card or be interested in it. And I think people have to understand what their motivation is and what they get out of it, right? Like I get a few things out of it. One, I get the appreciation for the sports and sharing some of those stories and moments with people that that have the same affinity for a player or a team or whatever it is, or an
Mm-hmm.
era even,
Mm-hmm.
like 90s basketball, right? There's a lot of people I'm 39 years old. There's a lot of people my age that remember 90s basketball and want to talk about it. Some of it is just affinity for teams, right? So I collect certain teams, I collect certain players. Some of it is, the excitement of opening a pack, is as awesome as it ever is, and you can do it. You can go to the hobby shop still, and you can buy, your card and open it, or your pack and open it there in the shop, or take it home, whatever. Or you can participate in these online breaks, and there's a chat room of 30 people watching you and cheering you on and hoping you win a thing, right? So there's like a sense of community. There's the part of it where it's a thing I do with the young kids and they're excited about it. And there's also the part where I buy these big collections and then I'm sitting quietly in a room for an hour or two just looking through cards, right? It's like
Mm-hmm.
peaceful, right? It's just like a thing that you do, like a lot of other hobbies, right? And so I think it boils down to what are you wanting to do? If you want to collect certain teams or players, eBay is a good place to go. Buying packs and boxes of cards can get expensive unless you're wanting to buy some of those, lower tier or older ones, from past eras that haven't held value over time. But one place you'll get a lot of value when things open back up is sports card shows, right? Like
Yeah.
they'll usually have, not sure you'd want to do that now, because you don't want to go to a place where 1,000 people are touching a card, right? But you get a lot of value. People have bins of cards looking for specific players. People work with you on make a good deal for you, or whatever it is.
Trade up sometimes.
Yeah, bring cards to trade. I don't sell cards, but I'm much more likely to, if I could, meet more people in person, I'd probably would trade, because I have some of the, because I've collected and I've spent a bunch of money this last year on some of that stuff. Some of those cards people are chasing, I have them, right? I'm not looking to turn them over, right now. Like I just keep everything. Now, in 10, 15 years, maybe some of those will actually be pretty valuable. And because I haven't been just trying to flip them, maybe I'll care a little bit more
Right.
about that value of a Ja rookie, or a Zion, basketball rookie, or some of these quarterbacks, that are getting a lot of attention right now. Or maybe I just, pass those on to my kids at some point, right? If they're really into the hobby, then they'll be like, wow, I have all these awesome valuable cards from years ago, that from when I was collecting, with my dad. Um, so yeah, I think it really depends on what you're looking for. There's definitely ways to do it and not spend a lot of money. And buying individual cards that you want is the best way to do that, right? Like, Miles Bridges is my favorite player on the Hornets, and I went on eBay and was able to get, people would just sell a bunch of his cards, together, and it's not it's not anywhere near the cost or value of some of these other ones. So I got 50 cards, 70 cards, of his, that I'm interested in, and I also don't care about them being in perfect condition, right? Because eyeballing a difference between a PSA 8 and a PSA 10, like if it's just sitting up here on my shelf and I'm not examining it, like
Yeah.
it doesn't look any different. There's nothing wrong with a card that's graded a 7 or an 8, right? Or even some of the old eras, like those boxing cards I have from 100 years ago, they have creased, frayed, like edges are messed up and stuff. But it actually adds to some of the interest in the card. Is like a certain charm to it, right? I
Right.
have a Walter Payton rookie card that was in one of the collections I bought, and it's got coffee stain on it, and it to me just makes the card look cooler. Like I like to think about like who owned this card and what happened, like when they got this
He was
card.
looking through it, just
Yeah.
now I got to get rid of
So,
this, right?
so if you're not all about the money, there's definitely stuff there. There's deals to be had and stuff like that. And I do think ultimately, in order for a hobby to stick around and do well, that it's got to have people that do it because they love doing
Love to do it. That's right.
it. Otherwise, people will jump on to the next thing. But I do think that there's a lot of growth opportunities still in the sports card industry. I hope that collecting cards is a thing that there's like now a whole new generation of people that that might have an interest in it. But even if that's not the case, like I'll probably still keep doing it. And if the values come down, that just means I can buy more of the cards that I want, and not have to pay as much to do it.
Okay. All right. Now, I'm only going to touch on the shoes real quick because we actually have one thing I didn't mention. I thought she was talking about impossible to ignore. There's a number of things that you mentioned because I went back and read a little bit
Yeah.
more that you were hitting some keywords. But I want to show you this just one shoe that's coming out. It's coming out Saturday,
Okay.
March 6th. And again, for those that are just watch Modern Future, don't pay attention to much of the sneaker stuff or some of the clothing things that I post. I am the equivalent of someone that buys shoes and wears shoes. So I'm much more of a collector in that sense than someone that tries to flip. But I got to show you these shoes. I got them right up here.
As a colorway, I'm a fan. Okay. Yep.
Look at those. Brother, let me tell you something. This is Nubuck on this.
Uh-huh.
So this suede Nubuck feels so nice, bro. And then the leather, top quality leather on it, man. These come out Saturday. People are gonna go nuts for these. And these have been the only shoes that I've gotten weeks in advance. So I had to come up off of. I traded somebody that I knew for them, right? So I had to come up off of a couple shoes that I was not expecting to come up off of, but I didn't want to risk the madness that I know I'm not going to be able to get them anywhere, and I'm going to be salty about it. And these were on my list. Now you talked about kind of going into with the plan, going in it with the plan. Now at the beginning of the last 2 years, now I've made a sneaker list. Okay, and then I try to purchase shoes on the list. If I can't get the shoes on the list, then I might shift to something else. But I try to keep it in like 5 to 7 shoes. Sometimes I think last year I went to like 9 because to me I had a different. After the pandemic, I was like, you know what? This might be a pivotal year where like any of the shoes come out like 20 years from now. You go, well, I got these during the pandemic. Like there's a story behind why I purchased the shoe.
That's interesting because because for me it's almost the opposite, right? Like I'm not wearing some of my sneakers, right? I put some of them on the shelf back here because I'm not wearing them, right? So I got like Kamikaze up there and some Jordan 3s that are sitting next to the Jordan cards. Because I'm like, well, I'm not gonna put them on. I might as well put them up here and display them with my cards.
Dude, I'm telling you, man, there's just something about this year where it was just like it clicked for me. It was like, man, I gotta get while we're in this pandemic, anything that comes out is like super interesting to me
Yeah.
because I can't
Good
just I
point.
can't just go walk up into the store and get them. Like I've done that
Yeah.
before with a shoe that I
Yeah.
really want, and you can't do that
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
The other ones I got to show you because I wanted Forum mids. I actually want the OG 84s that Adidas unveiled. They came out with it last year at the end of the year. But I bought this sneaker history book,
Oh.
and there were some years like from like 84, because I was born in 85, up to like more or less 92. Um, I wasn't really into like, I mean, I couldn't. I was a little kid. My dad is the first one that like took me shopping to go get some sneakers. And then
Right.
like that experience at the mall waiting in line for some Jordans, I must have been like 9. And I was
Gotcha.
like, oh man, this is cool. Um, and so I was at the height of like, when Jordan was in his prime, the height of
Yeah.
his madness. You go
Yeah.
into the mall and people would run
Yeah.
like as
Yeah.
fast as they could to
Right.
go pick him up. And so
Right.
I had like the '96 Beyond, so I only got a couple years of that. And then the end of high school, it was like, oh, I'm actually a broke college kid. I can't buy any shoes, so I didn't buy really any Jordans. And then more recently, I would say maybe in the last 5 years, I started to slowly pick back up again. But these are Forum mids. This is Beyonce's shoe, Ivy
Huh.
Park. Now, the reason I wanted to pick these up was that they reminded me from a color palette of these off-white Jordan 4s that released last year that are like $2,000 now, but
Yeah.
the same colorway. And I was like, oh, one of the rules that are kind of stipulations that I put it for myself for this year for buying forums was if a collab came out. So Ivy
Huh.
Park is a collab with Adidas and Beyonce. That's her line,
Right.
and she's come out with a forum mid almost every single time. So this most recent drop, which was her like ice pack or something like that, she actually was giving shoes out to some influencers in an actual case of ice that they had to break open, and the sneakers were inside. That was like the shoebox.
Hmm.
Um, so I
Interesting.
saw that and I was like, oh, this is pretty interesting. I'm gonna try to pick these up because one, I liked it because the colorway matched these off-white Jordan 4s that are ridiculously overpriced, and
Right.
because they're not a Jordan, her clothing sells out instantly. I got Christy a couple items, but her
Hmm.
shoes kind of sit. So I was like,
Huh.
oh, I'm gonna get these. So I got them, and they were here like 2 days later. So that was nice. Unlike some of the other things, like those Jordans that I showed you, nobody's gonna get those Saturday. Like the people that get them are gonna feel great. The people that
Right.
really want them are not gonna feel so good.
Yeah.
So that's just something I wanted to show you. March 6th. There's also some Yeezys that come out. The
Yeah.
the ones that look like crazy. I can't even describe them. They're like spiders on your feet, like they're webbed. They look like the foam posits.
Okay.
They're called the Yeezy 450s. They're supposed to come out the 4th or the 6th. Just look out for
Interesting.
them. They look crazy.
Interesting. I mean, I like Yeezys because they're the most comfortable shoes
Comfortable. Oh man,
I've ever worn.
so comfortable. So comfortable. All right. To end the show, I wanted to talk about a book that you and I really enjoy called Impossible to Ignore.
Yeah.
Um, we've not really talked, I've not talked about a book on the show.
Right.
So I kind of want to figure out what's the best way we can go about like talking about what we love about the book, why people should get into the book. Um,
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
some of
So
that.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's tough because it's like you could easily do a whole
A
like you
whole
could do a
show.
series of shows about just this book and the conversations that we've had about it.
Yeah.
But I think the simplest way to describe it, right, is so it's impossible to ignore. It's written by Dr. Carmen Simon, and the idea is that it's about understanding how memory works in order to influence decisions. So
Yeah.
there's like basically it's written more for like marketing folks, and
It is.
I think these days she even has like or is part of like an agency that that uses some of themes in the book in order to help people make better content. But I think for me, as I'm reading it, you have this like business use case for it, and that was the reason why we were reading it initially. But what I began to understand is that um, memory is has a very big impact on every aspect of your life.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're talking about core feelings and emotions that are tied to it, like fear and desire, or basically this, your memory is this thing that you actually use in a very forward thinking way. And so when you're making decisions and you're thinking out into the future, it's your memory that helps drive a lot of that stuff. And
Right.
so that's what the book is about. And she actually has like, there's chapters that cover different things, but there's 15 different things that she says that, impacts people's ability to remember things, and their context, cues, distinctiveness, emotions,
Motion,
facts,
familiarity,
familiarity, motivation, novelty, quantity of information, relevance, repetition, self-generated content, sensory intensity,
intensity. Yep.
social aspects, and surprise.
Surprise. That's
And
correct.
so, um, it's funny because we're talking about different topics over the last hour or so. And some of these things in conversation you and I have both used, whether we meant to or whether we didn't. So an example would be facts. I talked about golden auctions and how they had 800K in sales their first year, and then 8 years later they're doing over
100 million.
100x of that,
Yep.
right? And so that's a fact, right? And that's a thing that makes stuff sticky. So we could talk for an hour about each one of these things, but what I get out of it is a better understanding of what makes me remember a thing. I get a better understanding of if I'm making a piece of content or a thing that I care about, that I want to be impactful. It can help me. That's just like a lens that I put it through. Like, am I thinking about these things? And there's some practical uses for it, right? So I'll give you an example of like, I've used it even just to learn how to memorize things, right? In a world where you're not leaving the house and you gotta have a credit card and buy stuff online, I'm like, well, I gotta memorize my credit
Credit
card,
card.
right? And so what I do, what I did in order to do that is I'm using familiarity. So I'm tying a thing that I know a lot about, which is sports, and I'm tying athletes' jersey numbers to the digits in the card. And so then
Mm-hmm.
it's real easy. So if it's 1-8, then it's Peyton Manning. If it's 4-0, then it's Sean Kemp. If it's 2-2, then it's Emmitt Smith. If it's 2-0, then it's Barry Sanders, right? If it's 19, then it's Keyshawn Johnson, right? Like, you take these numbers, and then over that series or whatever, like, you can it makes it more likely that you're going to remember it. Then you use repetition, right? And so then if I'm trying to remember numbers in succession or whatever, right, like, I'm repeating the names of those athletes in order, and it's more stickier to me and less abstract than I've got to remember a 4, and then I've got to remember a 7, and then I've got to remember a 9 or whatever it is. um, and so, that's one example, right?
Yep.
You and I have talked about it as a way in more of like a personal life thing sometimes, right? Where
Mm-hmm.
it's like, say you wanted to give somebody a gift that would, make them feel good, or make them, understand that they're appreciated, or remind them of a thought or something, like, then, you could apply several of these things. So, and this is just an example. This isn't a thing that I've actually done, but like, say my wife drinks coffee on the way to work every morning. She doesn't do that, but you know if I wanted to get her a gift that reminded her of something, I might get her a special coffee cup that then goes into her car,
Car.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And whatever is on it probably has to have some significance, but the cues part of it is there's going to be a cue every day, right, when she gets into her car and she sees the thing. So it's like, if I want somebody to have a certain thought or whatever, or a reminder, then the fact that it's part of their routine and it's familiar to them, and it's a cue that's going to come up and it's going to be relevant, right? Because the cues have to be, relevant
Relevant.
at the point where you remember the thing, right? So like, um, she in the book she talks about point A and point B. So point A being like the context and the sort of place where the memory is encoded into your mind, and then point B being where you recall it, right? The place where you recall it or have to act on a thing. And it helps me understand why things work. So like, here's a great example, right? I need to drink a lot of water. I'm one of the unfortunate people that makes kidney stones. So I bought myself this water bottle on Amazon, and this water bottle tells me to drink water, right? And when I have, and so I have a goal of a certain amount of ounces of water I'm going to drink every single day. I need to do that. It's important. It certainly is relevant to me, right? And what happens is when it's been a little while, it's measuring how much I drink. When it's been a little while and I haven't, because I'm in a meeting or whatever, or I'm not thinking about the thing, it lights up and
Yep.
sends a push notification to my watch, right? Where I can't miss it, right? So the cue is fantastic. Now, the relevance is really high, right? For me, because I'm remembering the sensory intensity of being in an ambulance going to the hospital with a kidney stone, right? A terrible experience that I will always remember, right?
Yep.
And so it's relevant to me, and I care about about that, and so then emotion, for example, is like the part that's like, or sorry, motivation is the part that's kind of like the equation you do in your head of why does this matter. So when I
Mm-hmm.
saw the water bottle, I was like, oh, this will help me avoid that situation. And it's not a thing that I have to spend a bunch of time thinking about. It just does it,
Does it?
right? I bought this water bottle a little over a month ago, and I think I'm on day 32 or 33 of hitting my goal every single day. So this is a great use of all the different things that are in the book. Um, you will learn a lot about memory if you read it. Um, I think that the relevance part, in order to take action on this, and this is a thing you and I talk about because we both read a lot and then try to apply things.
Yeah.
And I think that relevance, has to do with that, right? Which is like, you can read this book and it might just be interesting book, but if you actually try to use some of these things to create content or or interact in some sort of way, then it will make it stickier because you're actually using the thing. Otherwise, you'll just read it and forget, just like everything else.
Everything else.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
There's. I mean, my biggest takeaway before we close out from this is just the amount of effort it takes to stand out from the noise when you combine everything. Uh, you have to be so intentful with what you do and your message. Um, I one of the excerpts I remember is like people with, like, they were talking about memory drop off. So
yeah,
people think that they remember a lot about a situation, but really it's like you remember 10% or less
yeah,
of something after the first time you hear it. So um, just the intent to build on that and be impactful in a world full of so much noise
yeah. Well,
makes it.
and one of the things we talked about is you and I, you see it. So when you see a good piece of content, you
You
understand what some
understand.
of those things are,
Yeah.
right? So for example, surprise, or one of the things they talk about with surprise, right, is talk about incongruity. So like your brain is really good at predicting things, and so it has expectations.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you see a familiar is another one. When you see a familiar situation, right, and then something unusual happens, unexpected happens, that gets your attention and it makes it you much more likely to remember it. So you see that a lot in comedy.
Yeah.
People are talking about a thing, a familiar situation, and then this crazy thing happens, and you're like, "What?" Right? And if it's novel, if it's something you've never
Never
heard of
heard of.
before, right, then that's like a multiplier. Same thing in horror movies. I'm a big horror movie fan. I'm watching the movie and I'm thinking, okay, here's familiar. What? You know what I mean? And
Mm-hmm.
it's that what that creeps you out, right? That makes you think about it. And so it's like this conversation, right, that you and I are having right now, we might not even remember a lot about it. We'll probably remember that we had it. Remember we talked about that episode, right? But if at the end of this episode you asked me a final question and I stood up and I started screaming my answer at you and stuff like that in a way that was really uncharacteristic and maybe even like inappropriate, like you'd be much more likely to remember that, right? One, because of the intensity. Two, the surprise. If I did it in some way that was really novel or unusual that you've never seen before, you'd remember that. You're
Yep.
probably going to repeat that happens to multiple people. You and I have a lot of mutual friends. I was talking with Will. We recorded this
Hey,
podcast.
he just lost it.
Yeah, exactly, right? It's like, so you remember it. And so when you put these things together, then you understand why do people remember things. And you can extrapolate it out to, like, all kinds of different situations,
Yeah.
right? Why does childhood trauma bother people so much? Well, intensity of experience. If it happened over and over again, if it, and so, like, these things impact people. And so the book doesn't really talk about that kind of stuff, but when you read it and you understand what the things are, then you think about how do you apply it to all the other situations.
Yes. So
That's what's so cool about it.
the year that I read that book was that same year that I also went on paternity leave.
Yeah.
For my second child. And so if you remember, when I left, I came back and I'd read like 50 books.
Yeah.
The reason I read that many books was because I read Impossible to Ignore earlier in the year.
Right.
And I was like, man, I really want to figure out more about writing and applying some of the things in my writing, incorporating that in a specific way, an intentful way, so that it's more memorable writing. And so there was just so many different applications that I have from that book, and I think the one thing that you and I talked about before we end real quick is using it with the purpose of influencing someone else's decision. In this case, I think the one I kept talking about, which I was like, I feel bad doing this, is my wife. And so I couldn't actually bring myself to do it. I actually told her, like, hey, ahead of time, like, hey, if I start talking to you in a certain way, I'm going to tell you afterwards that I did a thing to you, but I'm trying to see if it influenced your decision based off of how I'm speaking to you and what the things I'm bringing up. And so she just kind of looked at me weird and was like, oh, okay. And I ended up telling her, like, different times when I would do stuff. So I couldn't bring myself to just do it and not say anything.
Yeah. I don't have that same burden, because I think we do this stuff without understanding what it is.
Yeah.
Right? And it always comes down to intention, right? Like, anything that you can create that is powerful can be used for a good thing, or it can be used for a
bad thing. Yeah.
So when I bought my mother-in-law a picture frame that's a digital picture frame where I can send her pictures whenever I want, because she doesn't like to get on Facebook and read all the drama and stuff like that, that's happening in the world. The fact that she walked past that and remember that we care about her and see that thing, and understanding why that gift will make her feel that way is an example of using something like that for good. So, like anything else, it's a tool. If you find the tool useful, use the tool to do something good. Don't go use it to just
please don't
take advantage of people or make money, or
it's a very powerful book.
Whatever it is.
All right, so that's pretty much it for this episode. Will, thank you so much for coming on. We got to do this again. Sure. Figure out what type of things we're going to talk about and figure out some type of regular schedule. But I truly appreciate you coming on. If you guys enjoyed this show, want to follow Will for his sports card collecting, it's at Rackzilla Collects. We'll have that on screen for you guys. Will, is there anything you want to part with? Words of wisdom.
I'm just glad we finally got to do this. This is you talk about things for a long time. You do it, and I enjoy doing it, and so that means probably we'll do it again.
Do it again. Yeah, for sure. All right, so again, this is Modern Future episode number 15. Signing off. You guys see me maybe a couple weeks from now, episode 16, and see you guys later.